First to my left, a familiar face, Mathias Carlbaum. He's the president and CEO at International. As the CEO, Mathias has led this transformation of International these last couple of years. They've gone through a very comprehensive rebranding. It's now just International. No more, I won't even say it because we don't want to remind, just International. But he's also been driving this innovation within their operations and this digital integration that we're here to talk about. The company under Mathias's leadership has increased market share. They've grown profitability following the 2021 merger with the TRATON group, so all great things. But for the purpose of the panel, it's about this integration of software into the International products that's going to improve efficiency, safety, and ultimately value for the customer, right? So Mathias and International, longtime partners of ours here at ACT Expo. He's no stranger to the main stage here at ACT. So Mathias, welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice to have you, and congrats on the launch of the Class 8 electric ERH truck last week. That was great to see. I love an announcement leading up to ACT, gets people excited to get here. So welcome back.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you.
Next up, we have Catharina Modahl Nilsson, who's a member of the executive board at TRATON and head of the company's group product management. Catharina has extensive experience in a range of executive management positions within the industry, and she is renowned for her technical knowledge and her collaborative leadership, which has really helped to transform the TRATON Group's business by bringing in these new fields of technology, which, again, we're going to dive deep into here on this panel. So we're thrilled to have Catharina with us here today, that she was able to travel over here from Stockholm to be a part of this great discussion. So welcome, Catharina. Very nice to have you.
Thanks.
Next to Catharina's left, we have David Liu. He's the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Plus, which I think many of us know is a cutting-edge autonomous trucking technology company that's focused on the commercial vehicle sector and freight. David is a serial entrepreneur. He's had many successful technology-focused companies before co-founding Plus. In his current role in the company, he's working to make transportation smarter, safer, and greener through this suite of AI-based autonomous driving software that's designed to make transportation and driving more intelligent. In the company's 10-year history, we've seen some great achievements. They were the first to demonstrate a coast-to-coast autonomous freight run from California to Pennsylvania. They've done a lot of demonstrations in China, and there's a whole lot more that hopefully we'll hear about on this panel. David and Plus are really one of the foremost leaders in the autonomous vehicle space. They've been a good partner of ours over the years at ACT Expo, and I'm really excited, David, to have you here. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, on the end, we have the co-founder and chief technology officer of Applied Intuition, Peter Ludwig. Applied Intuition was founded in 2017. They are a leading software company that specializes in simulation and development tools for autonomous vehicles and advanced driver assistance systems. They work with the OEMs, the automakers, the truck OEMs, sensor equipment providers to integrate all this equipment and test it and ultimately help accelerate the development and the validation of autonomous and AI-defined vehicles. So I'm super excited to hear a lot more about it. Peter, very nice to have you here. Welcome to ACT Expo.
Happy to be here.
All right, so with those introductions, we're going to get started. Mathias, I'm going to put you on the spot first. The last time you were here, I got to read it because I want to get it right. You said we can be really good, the industry can be really good at overstating the benefits of a technology in the short term, but we often underestimate the benefits over the long term. I think that's a great place to start. How does that apply to this world of digital?
Yeah, well, first, I don't want to presume to be the owner of that quote. That's much thoughtful to be from me. It was actually Bill Gates in the mid-90s. It's been applied since, and it's still, let's say, valid, right? So how would we bring it today? I would see, let me just back out a little bit. And we see, of course, the transport and the goods sector has been growing through history. And if you look just to projections coming up now from the US Department of Transport, for example, we see that in the coming 25 years, they'll grow by another 60-70%. At the same time, you see also that, which was mentioned by you priorly today, that safety is a concern. I mean, there's been, last year, we're about 5,000 fatalities by truck in the United States only. And that's up close to 50% the past 10 years. So these two, let's say, macro trends of growth and increased, let's say, safety concerns, we see totally that safety, efficiency, and ultimately also, let's say, clean transport will be solutions to this. So we will elaborate here in this panel around how autonomous, connected, and zero-emission technology will, let's say, kind of work through to solve these two, let's say, one opportunity and one threat for the continuous growth of truck transport on the roads.
Safe growth.
Safe growth.
I want to dig in on the other benefits, but a couple of other questions before we get there. Catharina, I'm going to go to you next, and just you all are. We didn't really talk about the partnership, but you all have a partnership to working together. So, I'm wondering if you could maybe just quickly describe that partnership, how it came to be, and then ultimately, you know, here at ACT, it's all about the fleet customer, right? Why does it matter for the fleet? So that they hopefully are comfortable and will go buy a product. So can you talk about the partnership that you all have here amongst the players on stage?
Sure, and if we look at us, or everyone here in the automotive area, this sector is actually spending a lot of money on R&D. And I think if you look on it globally, I think we are probably number 3 comparing all sectors around the globe. And in our sector then on the automotive, we also see now that the innovations now, the majority of the innovations are coming from the area of electronics and software. And that is, of course, makes partnerships that have a strategic fit really, really reliable and good. And with Applied and Plus here, they have a strong footprint in Silicon Valley. And we as commercial vehicles producers, we've been around for hundreds of years, and we can bring this to this partnership. And then we see that we really have a good strategic fit here. But for us at TRATON, the strategic fit is not enough. We also need to have a culture fit. And the culture fit is so important because that's how we get the creativity. That's how we get people to be engaged. And that also brings joy to our engineers. And that's why I'm so happy to have the possibility to sit here today on the stage together with Peter and David. But of course, we don't do this partnership just because the case of it. No, this is of course for us to be able to create customer value. And for us at TRATON, we always put the customer first. And we believe that our partnership will enable us to bring products and functions faster to the market. And they will come in many different areas, but especially we will see that they will come in the area of uptime, total cost of ownership, but also in the area of safety.
Excellent. So maybe we want to pause because one of the things that was interesting, we have we call our fleet planning committee that we use for ACT Expo because we too are focused on the customer, right? It's all about the fleet customer. They have to buy something for the world to go around, right? And then the rest of this works. So we have a monthly call with this diverse group of fleets and we ask them, what do you want to hear about at ACT? And so this year we were talking about, hey, we're going to have this great panel about software-defined vehicles. And there was this silence, like, what's a software-defined vehicle? So I try to describe it, but I'm not the expert here, so maybe David, Peter, can you guys take a shot? Just what does a software-defined vehicle mean? And in the world of commercial fleet, what does the customer need to know about this going forward?
So fundamentally, software-defined vehicles are all about the ability to update all of the software on the vehicle after the vehicle has been shipped. That's really what it boils down to. The next step is imagination, right? What can you do with that software that you can update after the fact, after the vehicle is shipped? Do you want to add intelligence? Do you want to add logistics functionality? Do you want to add features to improve efficiency, to make your fleet operations better? All of these things are possible with software-defined vehicles. And I think more than ever before, fundamentally, it's about competitiveness. I think in the next few years, if you fast forward, let's say, maybe to 2030, vehicles that are not software-defined, they're going to start looking a lot like steam locomotives. They'll just be obsolete because they won't have the features and functionality that the software-defined vehicles will have. And so that's the basics.
David, anything to add to that description?
I think that's a great answer. The only one thing I would add is, when we think about software, when we think about the intelligence system, it's about this ability to fast iterate and improve on functionality. I think the world is going toward more of a service model. When you deliver something to the customer, it's through the lifetime of that product. So the industry that we are working on and leading toward is this, in terms of service and the customer, delivering something, customer value. It's not just at that transaction point, it's through the lifetime of that product.
Yeah. Peter, your comment about today's vehicles being steam locomotives by 2030, I'm not sure Mathias would agree because he's selling vehicles today that will be on the road in 2030, but that's an interesting point. I want to get back to it, but I also want to get back, Catharina, you had mentioned this is about uptime, TCO, and safety. I think safety is very clear why we want to do this, right? We always want to be safer. It's a culture of the fleet world, OEM world, et cetera. But at ACT, we're always super careful when we talk about sustainability. We say economic sustainability has to come first, right? Companies have to make money with these products, right? Ultimately, commercial vehicle is a tool to go out and make money of some sorts. Not maybe so much in the public sector, but it has to do a job, right? There's a function. So I want to dive and drill into the TCO a little bit. Like, what's the elevator pitch for the customer on how do I make money? What's my ROI? How do I make sure that I have a TCO? I assume these technologies are not free, that there's maybe a little upcharge that comes with it, but there's also this great value prop that we're going to improve your operations and improve your bottom line. So how does that actually work in practice as we move forward and continue to advance the state of technology? Anyone can jump in on this if...
Yeah, we can maybe help each other here. I think it's going to might be a long elevator ride though, but I mean start with some mentioned here already. I mean, one is of course the direct costs of maintenance, and I'm glad maybe to elaborate more that separately, but that will come down with productivity, of course. I mean, we look into figures of 10 to 20%. That figure dwarfs if you compare it to what kind of uptime this is possible to drive. I mean, the uptime, if you put a similar percentage of 10 to 20%, the value of that is just so big. We see clear cases already, not up to those numbers yet, but with what we're doing today in predictive maintenance and what it can do, let alone what's coming now future-wise with fully software-defined vehicles, and of course when the autonomous capabilities go beyond, let's say, what we have today on level 2, right? So I think just if you look on maintenance, if you add the uptime part, those two are already huge. Then you see, of course, more autonomous capabilities will enhance, and also, let's say, when it comes to fuel consumption, I think there are so many pockets around that just are a needed tool to, let's say, support this growth that I just talked about with, let's say, less vehicles out, just more productive and more efficient.
Let me make this interactive for a minute. So, show of hands, how many folks in the room have ever dealt with a software recall that involved plugging something into the vehicle? I see a good number of hands. With software-defined vehicles, you can get rid of that, right? If you can over-the-air update the software in the vehicles, you can completely remove that future risk for vehicles and all of the costs associated with those recalls as one additional benefit.
Yeah. David, you mentioned sort of this evolution. And so as we think about the technology where it is today and where it's going by maybe 2030, what's that evolution look like? Is this just continuously going to get better year over year? And will the truck that you buy today be able to just continue to get better? Or do you have to buy a new truck? Or how does this work from the customer's perspective?
Yeah, if I think about the overall trucking industry, it is the bloodline of the economy. I mean, 70% of all goods we use and consume on a daily basis are transported by trucks. Right? It's a, depending on how you calculate it, $500 billion or $1 trillion industry, just consider the heavy trucking side of it. Yet this industry is faced with tremendous challenge on the total cost of ownership. Right? It's a low margin business, single digit margin. Faced with ever increasing driver shortage, fuel cost, increasing maintenance costs and insurance. So there are loads of issues that we need to address for our fleet customers. And technology, really, the way we look at it, is a tool to solve those problems. And we've started this company almost 10 years ago trying to work on this autonomy issue, right? Then autonomous trucks will be able to address all of the challenges that I just mentioned there, right? It's going to be able to save costs up to 45–50% of the overall operating costs for running a heavy truck. It's going to be much safer. It's going to be able to deliver much better, easier to maintain trucks. And so overall, there's no lack of demand for autonomous technology. The issue is really on the supply side. We've been running, I remember when I graduated from school, it was at the tail end of the last AI winter. People have been working on autonomous trucks for a long time. We always thought this is going to come. When we started this company 10 years ago, we thought fully autonomous technology will be commercialized in 5 years. It took a little longer. Like we always overestimate on how fast technology is going to come, but we underestimate the impact of this type of technology will be having on the industry. Now, 10 years later, now we look at it. We truly believe we're at the inflection point of the next era of, call it revolution. Autonomous trucks will be the biggest invention since diesel engine, just because the benefit you're going to bring in on the cost side, on the safety side, on everything. And and if you go to today you go into a large metro like San Francisco or Austin, or if you take a taxi ride, 25% of the times you're going to be riding in the car, in a vehicle with no driver in it. So technology is there. Regulatory environment is very supportive of adopting this type of technology. So I think we are in the next 5 to 10 years are going to see this technology being applied commercially in the trucking space. And it's going to fundamentally transform how we do business. It's going to bring greater capacity to our transportation network. It's going to make our transportation network much safer than what it is today.
Yeah. I just want to support David here. I mean, it's not because he represents an autonomous company only, what you're saying here. I mean, if you just go back around autonomous, I think you go back 3 to 4 years or 5 years ago, I think every year it felt like it was further and further away, which is awkward in technology world, that autonomous was just getting further away. The past 1.5, 2 years, you see it starting to happen and coming closer. So I mean, it's truly now what is enabled by this, again, especially in the United States, with the combination of the technology available here, the regulatory part, the configuration, the type of fleets that are leaning into it, the size, the kind of mindset they're having. It is a very good spot here to be in. It's going to go faster. So I can just echo and support from our side as an OEM that's coming.
And also coming from us, then at TRATON, we actually already, since 1 year ago, are selling autonomous vehicles. Those are for confined areas, and we have a number of customers in Australia in open pits mining. So it is actually there also in the commercial vehicle space.
Mathias, to your point, every year we ask our fleet planning committee, we want to talk about autonomous, and they say, no, it's not quite ready, right? And this year it was, we want to talk about it. It seems like it's really at that moment, that stage to turn the corner. So, Catharina, you mentioned you have it in off-highway, sort of compartmentalized operations. Is that a regulatory issue, a policy issue? And I think you probably have a great global view on this, right, given your position from the product management group at TRATON and part of the Volkswagen portfolio, so you've got light duty in there. What do we need to be thinking about as far as regulatory policy, infrastructure type issues? Are those things holding us back to get this technology out on the road and scaled, or is that keeping pace and it's really a technology issue at this point?
No, I think that to some extent, definitely, it has to do with the regulatory space. And then with the confined areas, of course, it's so much easier because you're not out on the roads. But for us then at TRATON then and together with International and Plus here, we are now going to take it to the next step on highway hub to hub. And this is something that we believe is possible to do here in the United States. So the United States will definitely come before Europe.
Okay. Dave, you had mentioned the driver shortage. I was in the session this morning and your colleague mentioned we're not quite ready to take the driver out of the truck, but we're moving in that direction. And so I was wondering, just illustrate for us what you sort of see as the vision, and particularly with the timeline on where we are today and how this will scale over time, and what does that ultimately mean to drivers in trucks, or maybe not?
Yeah. So today we have in the United States about 80,000 driver shortage on the annual basis. So there are, at any given moment, we're short of 80,000 drivers. That's about 5% of the industry today. So if you imagine, if we have those drivers, and it's actually a shrinking population, right? So this is not the most desired jobs because it requires long hours on the roads, and for long-haul trucking, a lot of times drivers cannot return home on a daily basis, right? So what the problem we started the company trying to solve is that problem initially, right? How do we automate some of those work that we don't have drivers to do? And as we imagine this whole transformation of the transportation network, it's not going to happen overnight or over 5 years. It's going to happen over decades. But the starting point of that transformation is going to happen really in the near future, right? And it's going to be a gradual transformative effort. And starting with expansion of the transportation capacity, if we can solve 1% of that problem, we expand our transportation capacity by 1%, and we can expand our economy by 1%. Right? So that's our thinking of how this industry can be grown, and how do we try to tackle some of these really, really hard and large-scale problems.
So I want to maybe push a little bit on that. It's a decades transformation, but we maybe start with a 1% now, and then year over year that will get somewhere between 1 and 100. But for the fleet customer that's out there now thinking, well, what do I need to do? Is there a particular type of application, a particular type of truck product? Where do we start with this? Who's the first 1% here that we need to be thinking about? How do we help inform the fleet audience, like, oh, this is me. This is my turn to go talk to Mathias about buying one of these trucks?
So that's something we're working with the TRATON group with International on. We look at our OEM partners really as our customer partners to serve our end customer is the joint, the fleet customer. That's our end customer. Talking about culture fit, we're all customer centric. Like we look at the fleet customer as the end customer. So the initial starting point is probably going to be sort of starting out from these warehouse to warehouse fixed route transport modes, right? Starting in some of the heaviest, call it freight load routes so right now we're doing some of the customer pilots and testing in Texas. So we're going to start with that, and then gradually expanding to neighboring cities and states, and then covering the southern side of the call it Sun Belt states, and then gradually then expand to the national coverage. And then similar, we're doing similar sort of testing and expansion plan in Europe. I think Catharina and Mathias, you can probably add to what we plan to. It's our OEM's plan in terms of how do we serve the fleet customer jointly.
Just on the same note there, right? I mean, yes, with Plus we are doing live vehicles running like everybody else in the Texas Triangle, and now through the second half of this year, it's going to grow in let's say also with pilots and work with a number of fleets here in the U.S. And Erik, I'm sure before this panel is over, you'll ask when is the big commercialization going, And I mean, you heard the years are out there by everybody, right? It's 2 to 3 years away when you really see scale going out there. So what would be, and of course, I think now we're always talking about this, well, the autonomous level 4 capabilities, but I think we also must bear in mind that there's a lot also from today until then, that there are more and more features coming in on level 2, level 2 plus, that really are sought for and asked and very much driven by the market. And especially here in the United States, I would say, there is, for example, an Alliance for Driver Safety and Security, a big group of very prominent American fleets, together with the OEMs, are working through, okay, what capabilities can we enhance from today until then that will support safety in very short term. So it's the typical many, many steps, but in a pace that we would never have guessed or looked at 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And just last thing, also very clear, it's everybody's role here. We are OEMs, we do the truck, the hardware, the integration to the, in this case, in our case, plus software. And again, setting our software foundation applied is really setting that, our internal, let's say, brain to this, right? So, and our fleets and customers run their operations. So it's, if you look back 10 years ago, it was who does what in all of this ecosystem. That's much more clear today.
Mm-hmm. And last thing I would add would be that for the fleet operators, of course, it's not just about the driver, right, the autonomy driver, but it is about the broader logistics and how it affects the day-to-day operations of the fleet. And so, of course, we're all thinking about this and working on this, but we want feedback from the fleet operators as well, right? We want to learn from everyone in the room, and we're going to build the best solution possible that delivers the most value for the fleet operators.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Peter, because I think a lot of what we're talking about here is this autonomy discussion, right? And various levels of autonomy and the autonomy technology, but it's a little bit, I hate to say separate, but because it's all sort of integrated at some point, but today we have these commercial vehicles that have reams of data, right, that we can make use of, and that's a whole sort of separate thing in and of itself. And so I want to ask a little bit about how are we preparing for making better use of this data and AI? What do fleets have to be thinking about as far as tech training, IT infrastructure systems? How do we use this data, and what are the ways that it can really benefit us? So maybe, Peter, you can follow up and just talk a little bit more about AI and what this really means for trucking, right? Because AI is sort of a nebulous thing sometimes, right? It's like, oh, this future stuff.
Yeah, so first thing I would say is intelligence in the general sense is only just starting to come to the industry. And we view it as part of core to our mission at Applied Intuition to help bring intelligence into vehicles and into the industry, artificial intelligence. The general intelligence or general artificial intelligence really only has been widely used by people since it's roughly November of 2022, which is when ChatGPT really became popular. And it takes a few years to build great products that use this kind of advanced technology. So here we are about 2.5 years after that date, and we're just at the point where these really interesting products that really use and enable AI are just starting to come to market. And so you shouldn't think of it in terms of where are we today, but if you sort of plot the graph, look at the x-axis of time and the y-axis of capability, and where will we be 1, 2, 3 years down the road, there's going to be a big step change from where we are today. And on the topic of having reams of data, AI is incredibly useful for this. Right? You might have data that has historically not been very useful. You've been collecting it, you have a data logger, you got all this stuff back, but you don't have a data science team to analyze the data. You don't have 100 software engineers to build tools and infrastructure around this data. AI is going to change that. It's going to lower the barrier to entry to create applications and also lower the barrier to entry for analyzing that data and getting business value out of that data. And so like, Applied Intuition as a company, we're doing everything that we can to help our customers take full advantage of that. But I think the really interesting things to come, it's going to be in the next year or two. This is where there will be true economic impact of a lot of these new AI technologies in this industry.
It's fascinating, the 2.5 years that this has sort of existed from a product planning perspective. I'm sure, Catharina, that's like we need more time to really think about how this is going to matriculate into trucks that you sell to customers, right? So this is certainly something, this won't be the first and last conversation we have about this at ACT, for sure.
Maybe one last point I want to add. So
Yeah.
I'm fresh back from Shanghai, visiting the auto show, and just some interesting things there. Of course, highly competitive market, and I love competition. I thrive on competition. So when I see things that are super interesting, it's just incredibly energizing for the things that we can do for our customers. But DeepSeek, of course, made big waves in the industry when it was launched. And there were multiple Chinese OEMs that had DeepSeek running on their vehicles, OTA'd to consumer vehicles within 30 days of DeepSeek being open sourced. That sounds crazy, but that's the state of the industry. And so this is the level of competition that we have to be aware of, and how we're thinking about bringing technology and products to market.
It's going to move quick. One of the things I wanted to back up and just ask, and maybe Mathias or Catharina, ACT is very much focused on the various fuels and powertrains and lower carbon solutions and cleaner solutions. And I'm just wondering, when you think about AI or automation, is there an alliance there with any particular fuel or technology, or can this be applied really across the board to an electric truck, a diesel truck, a natural gas truck? I think generally we sort of think about electrified trucks as being more synergistic, but from a product planning perspective, is there any particular type of powertrain that you think is a better fit over the long term?
I don't think that it's actually down to the powertrain. I think I'm turning to look at Peter here, because why we probably believe that it's more maybe prone towards the e-mobility space is because there we've seen a lot of, especially in the pass car business, we've seen electric vehicles, and they have also had a software-defined vehicles. And that's where we can utilize the AI in a much, much more efficient way than we can do on our traditional electronic and software systems.
So let me push a little bit on that. We've talked about taxis. I think David mentioned taxis in San Francisco, and we see them in Santa Monica. And it's just, there's not a day that goes by where it just still doesn't sort of blow my mind. There's no driver in this thing driving down the street, right? We had Waymo give their 25 million mile update a couple weeks ago. They were on the panel this morning, really interesting. But those are all light duty, right? Passenger cars. Does that automatically translate to heavy duty, or is this sort of a different technology development cycle? Or can we really take lessons learned from the light duty space and just apply it to heavy duty?
I think from a foundation software technology point of view, there are a lot of things that can be shared, but there are significant differences in terms of the application area, in terms of the hardware and software integration, in terms of the validation of the integrated systems. Those are application-specific, industry-specific, and use case-specific. Those are the areas that we're working with OEM partners, with international on, integrating the software and the hardware, redundant drivetrain, redundant platform, and validate that, integrated product to be safe, to be robust enough to hand it over to the customer. So that's where we spend bulk of our time, is to make sure our product is of the quality standard, of the safety standard, and also working with the regulatory bodies to make sure that we can launch this product responsibly and scalably.
I like to say there's two things that kill autonomy companies: bankruptcy and tragic accidents. And there's a whole graveyard of autonomy companies that have fallen into that bucket. I think all of the companies here on stage were operating responsibly and very much trying to avoid those buckets.
Let me go back to the fleet customer for a second. As you all, I'm sure, every day are talking to customers about this really exciting forefront of technology and automation and AI, what are the things that a fleet can be doing to prepare themselves right now from a learning perspective, maybe from a personnel, procurement? Who do they need to hire? They need to be hiring data scientists, for example. And then also just some of the more rudimentary basic, and this maybe gets to some of the predictive maintenance, like do they need to be buying new IT systems? How do we engage with this now data-heavy vehicle And what can I do today to start preparing for this future, to get ready and be at the forefront of this technology?
I can start maybe. I think coming back to the structure of the fleet customers here in the US, it's quite unique in in many cases, the size, the capabilities and opportunities that they are also already after and working on. I won't be name dropping here. All of you could think of 5, 6 of those companies. They're surely here in this room and have driven quite far already their digital capabilities and exploring these venues on their own, so to say. I think there's a lot to do in all of this. Like you said, there's abundance of data, but it's very fragmented also, kind of the tools, the interfaces. Let's think of a driver today, all that they're exposed to, back end, front end, vehicle. I mean, it's not manageable as today. We have to bring much more simplicity, apart from, let's say, all this that we how we, let's say, structure the data, but how it's presented to all the stakeholders to tap into a common, let's say, interface source. So there's a lot of thoughts around that's being worked on. And just the daily, let's say, I mean, like we always promoted, let's say, okay, try into it. I mean, be curious about it. Of course, it's not a flipping business model, but if these services offered, I mean, don't say it doesn't work here. Try it. I mean, it's all controlled. We're all trying, let's say, getting our toes, our feet slowly wet into it. So we have to do it together. Partners here on stage, partners here with our customers. It's about moving the whole ecosystem. So there's no button to turn on and off, but we all have our role to do in this evolution here, or revolution.
Sounds similar to electric trucks or natural gas trucks, right?
Yeah.
Try one, prove it, try 10, buy 100, keep on going, right? Anyone else on how you're engaging with customers and things that you're telling them to start thinking about and preparing to do from their side?
Yeah, I would add, one of the great things about this trend towards software-defined vehicles is you have this great abstraction between software and hardware. And what this means in practice is you can do an awful lot using just a standard tablet or smartphone. And so historically in the vehicle industry, you want to do any interesting diagnostics or, let's say, any vehicle function update, you have some very special, expensive tool that you need a special trained operator to use. It's very clunky, and it needs to be plugged in a vehicle, and only certain people are allowed to do that. That's all going to go away. We're going to give you an awesome app, and anybody's going to be able to use that app. It's going to be straightforward and intuitive. It's going to have instructions built in. There's going to be AI that's going to tell you how to do the repair. The industry is going to change here pretty quickly. And so for IT systems, we would just say, well, do you have a smartphone? Do you have a tablet? And that's really all that you're going to need for maintenance of the next generation of software-defined vehicles.
Maybe a rudimentary example, just to bring it to here and now, right? I mean, we talked about this predictiveness, AI, and component failures, right? I mean, that's here today. So, I mean, when will this, whatever, turbo, battery, etc., with quite close, let's say, preciseness, fail? Well, that's very much the top of the iceberg, right? I mean, knowing that, what do you do with that? I mean, so there's a lot of back-end work to do also. So that, I mean, again, before this happens, that the part, technician, everything is in place, so this can be replaced in time. So it's not only about tech, AI data. It's very much down to earth also, what do you actually act and do with this data to solve the problem, right? So those things we're working very much with now. And like I said before, I mean, we see examples here of, let's say, bringing down a lot, let's say, what would you call it, dwell or wait time for repairs in our service shops. There are cases we get them down by 85% by being, let's say, early on to get, let's say, input from what the data throughout the whole value chain here. So everything is not all this future. There's a lot of things to do here now.
Stuff we can do today.
Yep.
So it's amazing how quick the time goes up here. But a couple more questions I want to ask, and maybe we'll sort of transition to sort of the future in this next year ahead and what we're thinking about. Catharina, I was very interested in your answer that we're going to see this here in North America before Europe. I would have thought the exact opposite, quite honestly. But it maybe so, Catharina, when you answer, you can sort of talk about both the European market and the North American market. But as you think about this next 12 months, this year ahead, What's the one big thing that you each want to get accomplished, right? That we come back here in 12 months and talk about the big hurdle that we were able to cross in 2025 into 2026. What would that one thing be?
Well, I think for me, who working with strategic product planning, I'm working on a more longer perspective, so it's difficult to say what will happen in 1 year. But I think that when we see what's happening in the world with AI, I think that will completely change what we see today. And you were into that, David, also, that you believe that it will happen in 1 to 2 years. And I think that we will see exponential growth in AI for the next few years. So I think that is something that we have to be prepared for and understand that this will change. And then I'm coming back to also what Mathias said. It is also important to dare to try these new technologies because they will come fast.
Mm-hmm. What else do we see for maybe the more immediate year ahead for, David, you want to jump in?
We typically take the strategy of keep your eyes on the longer term horizon, but take incremental steps, going toward that direction. Mm-hmm. So incremental step to us is this year we're very much focused on validation of our software system, validation of our integrated system with our international partner, with our TRATON partners, both here in the US as well as in Europe. We project next year we'll be focusing on commercial readiness along with validation. And we're going to launch this product responsibly. Whenever we can get it ready commercially, a robust and safe product, we'll launch it with our customer. But meanwhile, we are, one suggestion I will give to the fleet customer is, learn with us as we go down this journey, right? Learning by doing. It is going to be a paradigm shift when the autonomy future comes, but it's going to come quickly. So meanwhile, as we're still working on validating this product and maturing this product, it's time to come on board and learn with us. That's my sort of parting thoughts.
And as a part of our partnership with TRATON and International, and for the next year or two, absolutely, we're working on some quick wins that I think will make their way out to the fleet customers in a meaningful way. But on the slightly longer term horizon, we're really partnering on their next generation vehicle software platform. And it's going to be incredible. I think it's going to be industry defining, and it's going to enable International and TRATON to have absolutely world-class software capability in their vehicles. So we're really excited about that.
Mathias?
You let me last, so I got time to think here of the answer here. But I think for us, it's very much the easiness to use the technology will be centerpiece now this coming year. Be that the driver, be that the technician, the service shop, and everybody, so we don't get too much ahead of our skis, but make it user-friendly, focused on that. We haven't talked much about Erik today, and I think it would be a pity to leave that behind us. We are very committed also on the zero-emission journey. We continue investing in that as a group. We do see that it will play off when we get the right TCO and user-friendliness on that also, and that we see happening, so we don't lift the foot from that. And I think everything we've talked about today, I think we should also be very conscious and proud that there's a lot of leverage and leverage of this in the United States. It's technology, regulation, the ecosystem is very favorable for what's happening now, so we should not be proud, but really work and take advantage of that.
Embrace that, yeah. Well, I heard a lot of learn by doing and just start working with us, right? So I think that's sort of the call to action for fleets is let's start, let's put our toes in and maybe get up to our knees and keep going. David, I heard you talk about commercial readiness by next year, so we'll talk about what announcement you'll make at ACT next year. We'll look forward to that new product launch. Just concluding thoughts here, we've talked a lot about what I'll call more near term, right? This next year, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 year kind of evolution and what you're all working on and where we're headed. But in a sense, I think it maybe is easier to think about where this is all going if we sort of think about and try to describe where are we going to be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So as our concluding thoughts, I just ask each of you to paint us a picture. ACT Expo 2045. What's the products that we're talking about in this world of autonomous and connected and AI-informed vehicles? You want to start on the end, Peter? I'll put you on the spot. I'll give Mathias time to think of his answer again.
So this is before or after the humanoids take all of our jobs?
You tell us. You're the AI guy.
And the real level 4 is when the humanoid gets in the truck and drives it away. But no, I think it is super hard to predict. And the reason it's hard to predict is the AI technology is going to bring nonlinear change to industries all over the world. And the hardest thing to predict in technology is when you have nonlinear change. Right? It's very easy. Moore's law is a great example. Fairly predictable. Yeah, the number of transistors are going to double in chips every 18 months or so. You can sort of plot that out and then sort of imagine what can you do with that compute. So you can predict it pretty easily. The state of AI right now, though, is such that I can't really predict what's going to happen in a year. Right? I mean, when computers substantially cross the IQ of the smartest humans, what can you do with that? And how is that going to impact?
It's listening to you.
Yeah. And how is that going to impact industry? I think I'm very much an optimist in this realm. I think AI is going to be the greatest tool to ever hit humanity. And any job that any human is doing today, I think if you fast forward 5 or 10 years, they'll be able to do that job 5 or 10 times more efficiently. And then it'll really be up to our imagination in terms of what new products can you build and then how can you take advantage of that. And so I'm extremely optimistic, though, in terms of the precise prediction, much more difficult to make.
Anyone else want to paint us that picture of the future?
I think in 30 years, we'll have a fully autonomous, connected electric transportation network running.
We share that opinion?
Yeah, I definitely share the opinion here, and I think that for the next few years here at ACT, we will continue now to talk about the software-defined vehicles, the AI. We're only scratching the surface, but I agree with both of you. It's super difficult to understand what will happen because AI will shape the world in a way that we don't know. We're only scratching the surface right now. But definitely, as you say, autonomous, connected, and electric. That's what we will see in 2045 for sure.
Yeah.
Mathias, final thoughts?
Nobody will, let's say, charge us for if we answer wrong on this one, right? But I think of zero accidents, it's zero emissions. Today, 65% of all logistics happen on trucks. That share will be much higher because it's the by far most flexible and cost-efficient solution. Especially so when, of course, when it's zero emission and also, let's say, different sizes and shapes moving around. So I think that, and let's say that ACT is prospering and international as well in 25 years, right, Erik? We'll both be retired by then, but I think let's hope for that.
Well, we look forward to seeing what the future holds. It's been an absolutely fascinating discussion here today, so thank you all for being a part of this. This certainly will not be the last time that we talk about this at ACT. I think we've got a lot more to dig into because it seems like we're really, as I said at the beginning, just at that sort of beginning point. So thank you all for being here and great discussion, and look forward to chatting some more in the hall downstairs. So round of applause for our panelists.